Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello and welcome to tonight's post-race show for the penultimate round of the XOX Esports Challenge Series. I'm your host for this evening, Matthew Palmer, and with me in the studio is our Pro Class Series leader, Mikko Nässi. How are you doing, mate?
Hey, Matt. Awesome. Looking forward to the show.
Awesome stuff indeed. Before we start, though, we have a few shout-outs to give out here for a special thanks to our sponsors, XOX Mobile, One XOX, XOX eSIM, and Estremo Oil of Italy. And a special thanks goes out to our media partners, Galeri Kereta. So Galeri Kereta is one of the leading automotive automotive lifestyle channels on Facebook and on YouTube especially, and they've basically been covering all the hottest and nicest builds of cars out there, modified cars on the street, as well as off it as well. So you have a couple of nice MX-5s that they sent a clip over to tantalize the kind of thing that you're going to see there. Some pretty wild rides indeed. So those guys have been helping us out over a few different projects over the last few years there, but definitely worth checking them out. So head over to www.galerikereta.com. Also do check out their Shopee site as well to get yourself some cool merch. So as you can see there, rather tantalizing stuff indeed. So as I said, always get this shot wrong, you know. But like I said, they also have a Shopee page and they have their own merchandise. There we go. On Shopee, their site is called Galeri Kereta. On there, they've got plenty of hats and T-shirts and stuff for you to give out and rep Galeri Kereta as well. So one of the best automotive lifestyle platforms on social media, and definitely the guys with some of the coolest merch as well. So do check out Galeri Kereta. So yeah, now we are coming into the last part of the season, and we have ourselves a very interesting fellow in the lead of the Pro Championship, Mr. Mikko Nässi. Let me get this right. You are a professional race car driver trainer, or something along those lines. And you specialize in driver coaching and training, not only here in Asia with, I believe, doing some stuff for the Ferrari Challenge, Caterham Asia, and a few other series as well, but you also do karting. So how did you get into that whole scene?
Yeah, so do a lot of coaching in a variety of things, typically one-on-one, occasionally tied in with the organizer as well, but mostly freelance. And started, I guess, a decade and a half ago, roughly, just when I was racing karts, and a few new drivers were interested in getting some coaching, and I got recommended by team bosses or other drivers.
So yeah, I mean, how did you end up starting with these sort of things? Because I've always found it very interesting to actually come across the teaching process itself, because you know, you've been doing something for so long, like you're saying, like over a decade and a half of racing, but then to turn your mind around and try and teach someone else all the tips and tricks to try and be quick, that must have taken a little while to try and perfect it.
Absolutely, and it's always still a learning process. Teaching or coaching is, it's different to just driving fast yourself. It's understanding it, and then also trying to understand the point of view of whoever you're working with. So I hope I've evolved as a coach a lot over the past 15 years, and I think there's always a lot more to learn. And luckily, there's some great resources, awesome books, just on things like performance in any sport, and that applies to motorsports as well.
Yeah, because that's what a lot of people don't quite recognize if they're just a layperson watching on TV, is that it's a very physical sport, even in karting as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a physical side as well. Is of course tough. You have to be able to drive lots of laps and maintain focus. You can often find, particularly in karting, because karting is super physical, you'll find drivers that are able to drive something like GT car, something like Porsche Carrera Cup or Ferrari Challenge, they can do a half an hour race without much issue. But then when they hop in a kart, they're almost dead after 5 laps.
Yeah, I mean, speaking from the tiny bit of experience, I did have a little bit of an opportunity to drive one of those karts many years ago, and I can tell you, after 3 laps, I was done. That was officially enough for me, because it was so... I think it's second only maybe to a big single-seater in terms of physical exertion, and to be able to actually keep your mental state in the right place as well.
Yeah, and arguably you could say shifter karts are now more physical drive than an F1 car, for example, in many ways. Of course, G-forces, sustained G-forces aren't there, but yeah, super tough. And then, of course, I mentioned that drivers are able to drive something like Ferrari Challenge car for half an hour without obvious issues, but small mistakes start creeping in. If your heart rate's a little bit higher than it should be, you start struggling.
Yeah, and you also did a little bit of stuff in sim racing as well. Is there a lot of stuff that transfers from the real world of motorsports into sim racing?
Yeah, so sim racing, I've been dabbling in it since, I guess, when I started karting as well, since the 90s already, in things like Grand Prix World or Grand Prix 2, Jeff Grammon's series a little bit, and Grand Prix Legends, which is basically what iRacing is based on. But only really got serious in around 2011 with iRacing. But yeah, to answer your question properly of what transfers, I'd say a huge amount, just an absolutely huge amount can transfer over. I mean, you've got the exact same inputs. You've got pedals and a steering wheel, and you're sitting in place. The only thing that you're really missing is the G-forces.
Yeah, especially with the technology that's come along quite a bit, starting out from the mid-90s into the early 2000s. There wasn't a lot of sophistication in the sim racing equipment. I remember in 2005, I think I got my first sim racing rig, and it was fairly cheap and plasticky compared to some of the stuff now. Even a Logitech, I'm actually sat in front of a G29 now. It feels just night and day different. I actually brought that thing out of retirement for a few fun races earlier on last year, which was quite entertaining. How do you find the whole explosion in the industry side of the sim racing? Because that's something that's always sort of intrigued me.
Yeah, on the equipment side, if you're thinking of transference to real racing, I actually think the only critical thing is a brake pedal. So if you're on cheap Logitechs, your brake is just position based rather than any kind of resistance on it. So then that's something you have to learn when or if you hop into a real car. But otherwise, Logitech DFGT, which is bottom of the range, I'm not sure if they still make it, but steering wheel input wise, you can still transfer everything over, and everyone can still adapt even to the cheaper pedals. So I don't think there's anything wrong with starting out with whatever's available.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing there is to really just get out and start getting some laps in. I believe Ilham Labi, in actual fact, until very recently, he was on a G27 Logitech setup for a long, long time, and he was just as quick in that as he is with the direct drive wheel now. So it just goes to show that if you apply yourself properly, you really can get the results out of the equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a mistake to use equipment disadvantage as an excuse, because in sim racing it really is. It's as close as it gets, no matter what equipment you have. Maybe if you're on a keyboard, you might struggle a bit, but there's some crazy guys on keyboards and on a mouse as well.
Yeah, I never got that keyboard and a mouse, and you can actually lap in iRacing. How they do that? I have no idea.
Yeah, in that case, I guess the transfers to real racing would take a little bit longer, a little bit tougher.
Mind you, if they could do it on a keyboard and mouse, imagine what would happen if you actually gave themselves a steering wheel.
Yeah, I mean that's still probably they're 70 or 80% of the way there. They still understand all the basics of the racing line and when to brake and when to get on the throttle and things like that. So
absolutely. And the other thing I've noticed when I read through your bio is that you're now working with Mercedes-AMG in the Southeast Asia region as a driver training for that. How's working for to change the subject slightly here? How's working for a car manufacturer sort of come about?
Yeah, so I mean that's basically through some friends who Mercedes specifically started through a friend. They had an instructor drop out when I was in Malaysia for a Malaysia event, and I got the call up at 6 a.m. to replace someone that couldn't make it for the job. But I'd done some car events prior to that as well. But they're really interesting because they're mainly customer events, customer or media events when Mercedes-Benz customers or the media that might be interested in new car launch or something like that, they come to the track and primarily to have fun, learn a little bit as well about defensive driving and things like that. But it's mainly to have fun in some awesome cars, and they're typically the events are at racetracks. So it's often the first time the customers are on a racetrack in a car.
Yeah. So do you get a kick out of that when you get a customer who's hasn't been out on the racetrack, hasn't even really driven past the speed limit before, jump into one of those high-performance Mercedes cars and tear around the track with your guidance?
Yeah, well, maybe some of that can be a little bit scary when you're sitting in the passenger seat, but it's just like coaching. It's very rewarding when you get a customer who's really interested in driving and is really thankful for the whole process.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's what a lot of people don't realize when you're teaching some things. Like I've been lucky enough to do a little bit of teaching when it comes to the engineering side of racing, but it's a two-way street. When everything's working well and the student is learning, you really do start sort of feeding off each other and almost learning together in some respects, which is quite interesting. You find that a lot?
Yeah, 100%. So most of my coaching is actually asking questions. That's the best way to understand what the driver actually understands, and then you get follow-up questions based on their answers. But yeah, also one of the things I recommend to a lot of young drivers is to start coaching others, because you look at driving in a different way, you learn things that you didn't know, and I've learned plenty from drivers that I've coached. It might just be things to explain things in different ways, or it might actually be something new. There are occasions when a driver hops in and we have a data comparison and they go faster than me in a corner or two. So it's always awesome to learn new things.
Yeah. I mean, driving nowadays is it is still evolving. A lot of people think it's set in stone, but the drivers, especially at the top of their game, really are developing their skills throughout. So I guess it is a case of never stop learning, even at the top end of racing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think maybe an explosion in that was just GoPros, having onboard cameras that you can stick on the car. You can see all your inputs, and it's just an awesome way to learn. And for a coach, of course, to see exactly what the driver's doing rather than something like trackside observation or relying only on the data.
Yeah, because you can really internalize and see exactly what's happening with the pedals and the wheel and the attitude of the car through the corner. I guess we are visual beings at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, when I started coaching, I maybe relied on data more than I should have. But then over the years, I realized that video is absolutely amazing for seeing things, especially if you have it set up correctly. And it's a bonus if you can see the pedals, and of course, important to have really good audio quality as well, so you can hear the engine note.
Yeah, that's one of the things when GoPros first started coming out and we started using them on race cars at Interformula. It was quite entertaining because it was a bit of light-hearted camaraderie because most of our drivers were gentleman drivers, and we were always giving them stick about not going flat through 10-12 at Sepang, for instance, and silly things like that. But it was so mind-blowing because trying to deal with something in data, especially when you have someone like me on the other end of the equation who's not necessarily the world's greatest racing driver, when you see video, you can actually really internalize and actually talk about the problem. It's right there in front, and like you said, when you set the cameras up, it's an amazing tool.
Yeah, and you can of course use every tool that you have available. So you can use data, you can use video, and you can use the driver's mind as well. You ask the driver, or if you're coaching, trying to improve yourself, you think back to your previous session and you think what the car felt like in a specific corner, or you think back, maybe try to figure out why a slide happened or why there was a mistake somewhere.
Yeah, it's perhaps the oldest coaching trick in the book, asking the drivers questions afterwards.
Yeah, and hopefully getting honest answers as well. It's a lot of fun.
It's a bit of a 50-50 occasionally, speaking from experience. But
yeah, yeah. I mean, your example of turn 12 at Sepang, driver says I was flat. Data says no, you weren't.
Yep.
Very common.
Absolutely. So while we're having a nice illuminating chat with Mikko Nässi, I'm just going to remind you guys at home of the contests that will be running. So there is a giveaway prize for all of you guys out there watching this stream right now. A 1XOX prepaid SIM card is up for grabs. There'll be a couple of questions that will appear in chat fairly shortly, just after the break, in fact. And so do stay tuned for that. How you enter is you're going to have to like some Facebook pages, like Galeri Kereta, like XOX Mobile, 1XOX, and Streamer Oil, as well as Adrenaline Impact. Like as many of those pages as you can, and also share the stream. So that's the main thing. That's the most important thing, is to share the stream. And once you've done those two things, the questions will appear in chat, and I'll read them out to you, and you'll be able to answer them right there in chat. So do stay tuned to the Adrenaline Impact stream if you want to watch that unfold. So pretty interesting stuff out there. So now we're just going to head over and have a quick look at the amateur class points standings. Right now, a 10 points difference separates first and second place. Afizul Jai up there in the lead of the championship with 69 points, with Muhammad Ali. Kamal Ali there in second place with 59 points. Absolutely fantastic racing from him. The two Just Keep Racing drivers of Muhammad Zikri and Shami Azri are in third and fourth place, with Lloyd Lachlan for Toda Asia in fifth. Azrul Nazli is in sixth, followed by Umar Aziz, Sharon Norafuddin, Simon Sanchez, Surin Savaraju, and Eddie Adrian, rounding up the top 11. And now having a look at the team standings, Just Keep Racing still in the lead there, but they're really going to have to focus quite hard on trying to get their drivers further up that drivers leaderboard if they want to try and keep their position at the top. But it's still quite a commanding position out there. Just Keep Racing with 86 points, Android King Hyperbulls with 72 points. It's definitely going to probably be decided at the next round, so do stay tuned for that. The 1XOX TKKR Racing Team AM, well, they have 59 points, 67 if we count Bobby Farid's points. Of course, Bobby Farid is a wild card for this season. He's the owner, the chief sort of team manager, team principal, if you will, of 1XOX TKKR motorcycle racing team. And that's raced at Moto2, the Spanish CEV Championship, as well as Asian Road Racing Series. So it's interesting to see, because Kamal Ali is up into third place with 1XOX TKKR Racing team. As you can see, officially, that team has 59 points, all from one driver. So that's pretty impressive stuff. Stream Not My is in fourth place with Toda Asia fifth, Hyperbulls Bushwhacker in sixth, and Veteran MSR in seventh. So I mean, just looking through my notes here, one interesting thing that came up that you told us about is the breadth of events that you did over the course of the years. Because obviously you've done karting, which is something that I think most people associate with Mikko Nässi, the driver, but also a lot of support racing, support event entries. I think you might have the record actually for the support race entries for a Formula One race, the Malaysian Grand Prix, and you've also entered the Malaysian Grand Prix for bikes, the MotoGP event. And you've entered the sport race for that on a bike once. And you've definitely been doing quite a lot of racing on virtually everything, it seems.
Yeah, the MotoGP event was an awesome experience. That's the 1 year I had a license to race bikes, and that was actually because my dad used to race bikes in Malaysia in the Malaysian Super Series, and that year he was racing the Kawasaki Kips. Nice. So I joined him in the support race and rode around near the back of the field, but it's showing up that counts.
Yeah, still, I mean, it's quite interesting, because as far as I know, that it isn't really a big thing in Asia for guys to jump from 4 wheels to 2 wheels or vice versa. And usually, if they do make the switch, it isn't for a one-off event. They're usually switching permanently. So perhaps it's something a bit more sort of what we used to do back in Europe more.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not an easy switch. I'd guess it's probably easier the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
There are a little bit more, you know, with a bike you still learn things like the limit of grip and all the basics, all the theory, and you have to change a bit for the car. But then I think the feeling on a bike and, you know, just the fear of falling off and that kind of thing, and much longer braking distances, maybe that's difficult for bike riders to adapt in cars, is in the opposite to the shorter braking distances. But yeah, massive respect to anyone that rides bikes.
Yeah, I mean, personally, you wouldn't find me dead on one, apart from going to the shops in one. I find it a frightening concept, especially as I remember quite vividly, I was given a speed radar gun by one of our customers back when I was still an intern working for my father in his race team, and that was quite hilarious because we were trying to catch, we're working out gearing for a GT3 Corvette, and right afterwards was a bike event, and I do remember some of the speeds those guys were coming down into turn one at Sepang. It's just frightening. Well north of 300 kilometers an hour.
It's a crazy feeling on those. I think I rode a track day or two on my father's 600 bikes, and coming up to turn 15, and you hit the brakes and it feels like nothing happens.
Yeah.
Compared to a car, wherever you might be hitting the brakes, somewhere around the 200-meter board versus, say, a 100-meter board in a car. And yeah, the initial bite on the brakes feels like nothing happens.
Yeah, we can see some of the guys coming through there. Looking through at the comment section there, they finally, Alang, our director, has finally brought that up there, just to catch one of your old oppos, James Russell. It's like comment there. He lost his head before you were born. God. So to explain, it's a bit of a rat pack with you and James Russell and a few other guys who've been racing out here in the tropics for quite a few years, hasn't it?
Yeah, James and I go way back to pretty much when I moved to Malaysia.
Yeah.
I think early 2000s, we were same race events. He was karting, I was karting. I think I even remember an event we did in Genting where we were both participating.
Yeah, so it was pretty impressive stuff, and it got. I mean, there was a bit of rivalry there, of course, when you're in the same class racing together or what have you. But there was a bit of kinship as well, friendship, if you will. I do remember that you actually did a rally with James Russell, because for those of you who don't know, James Russell did quite a lot of rallying back in the day. Even I think got into the Pirelli driver search program. But for one of his earliest events, when he just got his license, I think he took you as a co-driver for that one chance. How was that?
Yes, that was another fun experience along the same lines as the MotoGP event. Very unique, something I probably wasn't expecting to do. But I think James had an issue where his co-driver wasn't available, and then they tried to figure out someone who they could call up last minute, and we did a few. I don't know, 10, 20 minutes of driving his rally car around Shah Alam, where I was pretending to be a co-driver. And then a week later, I was co-driving in the Malaysian Rally Series.
Yeah, how was that as an experience? Because I know for a fact that a lot of drivers who spent their time driving have a hell of a time trying to actually convert and become a co-driver, because you're sat in the seat and you have to trust that the driver is going to do the right thing coming up to those tricky hairpins and junctions. So how did you cope with that?
Yeah, not well, I think. It's something that was awesome to try once, but again, it's an incredibly difficult job. Just like I imagine riding a bike around the Macau GP, something I have massive respect for. And for me, the co-driving, I guess the main thing is that I'd have to get really good at it to find the enjoyment out of it, rather than a bit of fear and, I guess, feeling unprepared.
Yeah,
might be the right way to word it.
I mean, speaking from personal experience, having done a few rallies as a co-driver, I think you constantly feel unprepared because there's always something else that needs to be done. So I think I'm not sure how we actually get satisfaction. I always feel satisfied after the event. Never seem to be satisfied at all during when I'm actually in it.
No, I mean, it was the event for me was all right because it was one of James's first rallies. There wasn't really any big pressure on me besides calling the notes wrong, which is pressure enough. But we did end up having a bit of a meeting with a tree towards the end of the rally, and early in the rally we found a ditch as well. But all fun.
Well, there you go. Occasionally, you just in rallying, you sort of have to find limits by going over them. So that was a bit of an introduction to rallying for that sort of.
Yeah, it worked. I think James became a really, really fast driver. So
he's got you to thank, sure.
Yeah, going over the limit at the beginning was worth it.
Yeah. Have you ever thought you would try a rally car one day?
Driving, that would be something great to have a go at. Very different, I think, driving on gravel or even snow versus on a racetrack where you remember every single corner that's coming up.
Yeah, you do one corner twice in the entire event as opposed to the same corner 15 times during the course of a race. So it's a completely different sort of mindset that you take into it. But it's quite interesting stuff there. A few more comments down below. I'm just going to dredge up here. Mikko did some gymkhana in his red Kalisa. Ken Block nearly retired after that.
The handbrake got a lot of use in the Kalisa, that's for sure.
I think that's the main rule when it comes to race drivers and pro doers. Nearly everyone I've talked to here in Malaysia has either, as a race driver, has either thought about getting one, bought one, or rented one, and I have heard of none of them complain about the handbrake in that car.
It's good, handbrake. Just got to make sure it's tight. That's all that really matters.
Get the 8mm spanner to just do up the do up the cable, and you'll be perfect. So now coming through a few more notes here. Alrighty, just for those of you at home there, I've just got the old sim racing enthusiast group. That's where most of us reprobates hang out. And there, for all of the drivers that are watching the stream, there is a practice session being hosted by Bobby Farrett, so do stay tuned for that one. Starts at 9:30, and it's he says here it's live in Eurosport, Vision Network, Astro, RTM, TV3, TB89, Bluebird, and Tamil Nissan. So perhaps that's where all the money's going. So in any case, all that remains for me to say for this half of the program is to stay tuned. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes, but for now, just before we go off for our break, a special thanks to our guest Mikko Nässi, and a special thanks to our media partner Galeri Kereta and our sponsors XOX Mobile, One XOX, XOX eSIM, and Streamo Oil. We'll be right back after this, so do stay tuned. And we're back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host for this evening's pre-race show for round 4 of the XOX Esports Challenge. I'm your host, Matthew Palmer, and with me in the studio is Mikko Nässi.
Hello.
And a special thanks to our media partner, Galeri Kereta, XOX Mobile, OneXOX, XOX eSIM, and Estremo Oil of Italy. A few more commenters down there. You got your sister down there in the comment section.
Yep. Hey, Anna.
Anyone else you want to shout out as we head off?
Hey, Dad. Hey, Mom. Hey, Amir.
Awesome. So, and Afik Fadlan there giving out his own shout out. Hey, Max. Oh, hi, Afik. So, wanted to get your sort of thoughts on your championship position as it stands so far. I guess did you expect to be fighting at the front of the field, or did you think you might have struggled a bit? How did you think you were going through it?
I mean, I knew at the beginning, just looking at the qualifying leaderboard, that there's definitely a few really quick drivers that are, especially in the MX5, super fast. And then, of course, Ibrahim, who I know from real racing as well. I coached him back in the day as well when he was quite new to karts. So I knew the competition is tough for sure.
Yeah. So how did that full focus racing team get put together? Did you just sort of find out that Ibrahim was entering the competition and you two decided to team up, or was it sort of something that got worked out beforehand?
It was I think we both saw each other's names on the leaderboard, and I think I was about to send Ibrahim a message, but he beat me to it and sent me a message first. So,
yeah, some things just make total sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, how do you feel actually when you got into the racing? It was quite interesting to see the different characteristics of the drivers come out there. How did you feel after the first few events, getting that lead and now maintaining that lead over the course of the season and growing it? Did you find it hard to keep your position up at the top of the field?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to how much time you have to practice for the events, and a few of the races I've had a fair bit of time, a few a little bit less, but you still have that few hours before it starts. So usually you get in the flow. Sometimes you mess up your qualifying lap and it makes life a bit more difficult. But in the end, it comes down to racing the cars, finding that pace in the race. And because they are fairly strong in the slipstream, you don't necessarily even have to be the fastest driver to win the race in the end.
Yeah, it's all about that sort of slipstream overtaking maneuver, these MX5 cars. It's sort of a lot of guys are actually talking about this and whether they reckon iRacing didn't quite get the slipstream right on the MX5 cars. Speaking from, well, sort of partially from experience, I don't remember open-top cars having that strong of a slipstream effect. I don't know. Do you think it's sort of realistic, or?
I'd venture to say that it is pretty good. Just based on YouTube videos of MX5 racing in the US.
Yeah.
I do remember some discussions about the Skip Barber draft on iRacing, and in then the same thing was that people compared it to real life onboards, and some of the series have, I think it's called the Hanford device on the back.
Right, yeah.
And that creates a lot of drag, and so in a slipstream that has a massive effect. So you watch some of the onboards and then you realize it's actually pretty realistic.
Like that,
yeah.
It literally is the case that truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had a chat with the physics model in general for the MX5 cars. It's changed quite a bit since the previous physics models. Is there anything you don't like about the quote unquote new MX5 as it stands now?
Yeah, I hadn't driven it much, so I'm probably a few updates old on the car, but in general, it's always tough to judge it accurately necessarily, because as you drive it more and more and more, you maybe get used to it, or you find some quirks. And maybe with the MX5 and similar to the Skip Barber on iRacing now, one thing I find is that the car tends to be, especially slow corner exits, you kind of have to drive it with, like you crank some input in, you feel like it should be understeering, you get on the throttle early, but then abracadabra, you get a little bit more grip. So you kind of have to drive it maybe a little bit unrealistically just to get those last 2 or 3 tenths. It's just the grip tends to stay on the front tires even when you get hard on the throttle. whereas the car should be lifting the front tires, unloading them, should start understeering, but you find that magical grip.
Yeah, it's been quite interesting to see. It's getting to the point now that you're playing with the physics model of the car to be quick, especially in the company that we're keeping in this series. It's quite interesting to see that it literally does boil down to the case of learning the quirks and trying to drive around it.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's the case in any sim, and to a certain extent in real life as well. You need to try to figure out the quirks of, say, for example, in F1 when Pirelli changes the tire compounds,
yeah,
things might start feeling a little bit weird or almost unrealistic, even though it's real life. So it's as realistic as it gets.
Absolutely. There's a fantastic question down there. Before we head over to those questions and to the standings, we're just going to have a quick look at the XOX Esports Challenge giveaway prize for viewers. So we do have a SIM card up for grabs. It's 5 gigs and 100 minutes of for free, and a massive 28 months of validity on all that for that SIM card. So Boss Bobby is being a bit generous this evening. So do stay tuned for the questions that are coming up fairly shortly. I should get. So for those of you wondering how to win, do try and like as many of the following pages as possible: Galeri Kereta, XOX Mobile, 1XOX, XOX eSIM, and Adrenaline Impact. And try and like all of our sponsors' pages. And also, the most important thing as well is to share the stream and spread that sim racing love around. Once you do that, get ready for the questions coming up ahead. So I believe the questions have been texted to me, but first we're going to go through the Pro Class drivers standing, and there you can see it. Mikko Nässi, our guest this evening, is in first place for Full Focus Racing with a total points haul of 76 points, with Ilham Halabi in second with 63, and Mohamed Ibrahim in third place. Dominic Ang is in fourth, with Samir Aizan in fifth, Iman Danish in sixth, Saifo Arifin in seventh, Freddie Ang in eighth, Ruben Wong in ninth, and Tuku Ezan Le in 10th. So fairly interesting things going on there. Theoretically, Mikko Nässi can still be caught. I'm talking about Mikko Nässi like he's not here. But yeah, technically, I believe you can still be caught in the championship, but it's just getting a little bit harder as the races go on. But the main thing for Ilham is that he's going to have to really dominate the last 2 rounds of the championship in order to try and catch Mikko. So I guess you have to say that you're feeling just a little bit confident for the championship win.
Yeah, I mean, the key is consistency. Like, if you have a look at the championship standings there, we've got Ibrahim really probably should be in first place. He's had a few mistakes. I think he had a penalty, and then he had contact with me, unfortunately, at the Nürburgring. And also, of course, Dom is really high up there in fourth place, and he's been improving his pace. But if it's just outright pace that we look at, he probably shouldn't be in fourth, but he's been consistent and he's always there.
Yeah, that's interesting with Dominic Ang. Let's be honest with you, he's dragged that car into places it really shouldn't have been, especially at the first round. I remember he got really lucky getting himself up into third place, and with a few other results there. But I guess it's true that in these cars, racecraft can make the difference between those last few tenths of pure pace.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just being sensible about things. There's no point risking things early in the race, that kind of thing. It's if your interest is in the championship. If your interest, of course, is just putting on a show for the fans and winning that one race or crashing out, then it's up to each driver to choose their own strategy.
Absolutely. Many a driver has gone for the going out in flames of glory tactic, and it's always entertaining to see when that happens. Who knows, maybe Dominic might actually start putting his foot down and trying to win one of these races. I'm sure he's pushing hard now, but who knows, if he senses an opportunity, he might be going for that win.
Absolutely.
So now we're just going to have a quick look at the team standings. You must quite enjoy Looking at this particular slide here, Full Focus Racing is a full, I believe, 50 points ahead of Total Racing. 40. Yeah, 40. Sorry,
40 sounds right.
Something like that. But it's a pretty decent lead. You've definitely been working quite well with your teammate to try and drag you guys up to the top of the standings there.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll have a clean event at Phillip Island, and then I think we can wrap up the championship before the final round, and then it's we can have a bit more fun in the final round without doing any math.
Absolutely, because the math is starting to hurt my head here just a little bit. Usually I have someone else doing it, but this time around with MCO, I've been shorn of all my helpers. But yeah, just interesting to see. We've got a competitor who's dropped in a couple of messages there. That's Afik Fadlan, aka Afa. Well, 3 questions in one. He's being a bit greedy there, and he's got another question further down. We'll go through the first 3 first. Mikko, how do you feel about the racing so far? How competitive is it against other regions, and what would you recommend to improve the competitions here in Malaysia?
Yeah, I mean, comparing the competitiveness, my main comparison is to iRacing series, which is worldwide, of course. Anyone can join those, so the depth of the competition, of course, will be greater. But competition level, it's up the front. It's very high in this series, and then the racing, it's been awesome. Of course, I've had a few of my own incidents, and same goes for the other few drivers at the front of the field, which is always happens when things get competitive. And as to improving things, it's things like this, really professionally organized racing series. The XOX Esports Challenge is an awesome way to do that. And I think, of course, massively because of the unfortunate situation of COVID, you're getting a lot of the real drivers, real teams get much more into sim racing. And I think that also boosts up the level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I probably know about the people we're talking about when I say this, but let's not name names here. But I know quite a few team owners and team principals and chief engineers and people like that, some senior members in teams, saying not too long ago, actually, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, that they don't see sim racing as being very serious, or at least not as a competition being very useful to their drivers. But now there seems to be the same sorts of people actually coming out of the woodwork now and getting teams together and entering into the competitions. So it's quite an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it also works from the business perspective for real life series organizers, for sponsors. It's more interaction with fans, gets more exposure.
Absolutely. We've been quite happy to say that we've had quite a lot of exposure for sim racing here doing this series, and not only here in Malaysia, but as you know, especially with yourself, drivers from Singapore and also from the Macau China Sim Racing Association coming in as well. It's quite an interesting thing because there's almost no such thing as a local race series. Virtually everything now is regional, and you get to compete with people from all across the region.
Yeah, absolutely. And just actually to expand a bit more on the improving competition, I think one aspect that the real life, especially the team owners, engineers coming in, is just bringing a bit more of a structured approach to driving. Mm-hmm. So rather than just doing lap after lap after lap, which does improve you, but then the slightly more engineering approach gives you a bit more of a technical look at it and probably speeds up the learning curve.
Yeah, it's just that sort of thing of working smarter instead of harder. Instead of doing 200, 300, 400 laps of a track, breaking the track down, thinking about all the elements that make up a good lap of the track, working up from there. I guess that's the best way of bringing yourself forward.
Yep, absolutely.
Alrighty, so we're coming up to the quiz questions. They've been texted to me via my XOX equipped mobile phone. We've got 2 questions for you guys. So all of you guys that have been sharing the stream and liking those Facebook pages, do heed it. There's 1 card to give away. I'll do this in Malay and then I'll try and translate it there. Siapakah tetamu untuk pre-ratio round kelima? Dan siapakah driver apabila tetamu tersebut menjadi co-driver rally? So who is our guest for the pre-ratio for round 5? And the second question, the slightly more difficult one, who was the driver when our guest went rallying as a co-driver? So that's, as you can see there, down there in the comment section, you get to be reminded of that in the pinned comments. So do put your comments down there in the bottom. Faisal Alan, can I answer? Well, I don't know. Can you? Can you? You should be able. And quite a few. I'm not sure, James. Should you? This always happens, by the way, in the stream. But it's nice to be able to just take a step back and have a laugh. But yeah, Faisal Alang, James Russell, anybody who's in the comment section, do answer. Well, I'm not too sure if the automated bots are going to pick your entry as the winner, but we will accept your answer nevertheless. Another question there. Well, whilst the guys are going off on a tangent there, another question that I saw from Afif Adlan was talking about beginner drivers just getting into sim racing, because as you know, there's a big explosion in sim racing in the course of the first and second MCO lockdown period. And you're just wondering, what is the best thing that these newcomers can do to try and improve their racecraft and improve their driving mainly?
It's a tough question without knowing the level of that driver, but with anyone new, it's understanding the basics. So it is worth just figuring out basics of, for example, braking technique is key. So knowing how to get on the brakes, how to start releasing the brake.
Yeah.
And usually anyone that's interested in sim racing already has an idea about racing lines, but then learning things about paying close attention to those racing lines. For example, how you're using the track, are you using it edge to edge, and that kind of thing. And just the basics of getting on the throttle. Should you slam it on smooth? And what's your steering doing when you're getting on the throttle?
So really just getting those basics down, that will be the first step.
Yeah, and then you can Google for lots of good resources. Basic theory is super useful, and then applying that and taking an approach to your own driving of trying to learn and actually reviewing your own replays. And the great thing about sim racing is as well that so many people share their laps.
Yeah.
Not just on YouTube, but on the forums, you can get the actual replay file for the game, and then you can see on your screen exactly the way that it looks for you, what they're doing, and you can get their pedal inputs up. It's just an awesome way to learn.
Yeah, it really is a case of actually having something right in front of you, an example of a good lap around a racetrack. That can help so much when it comes to especially learning a new track. And it's something I always try and do, is to look up a YouTube video or something like that just to see where the braking points are going to be when it's turning. So speaking of videos, we do have a hot lap of the Round 5 circuit. This is Phillip Island in Australia, and we have the AM class leader, Afizul Jai, going out on his hot lap. So normally I'd be... Alrighty, as he's going around the out lap here, we're going to show the out lap and the onboard lap here. I just wondered, Mikko, normally I'd be doing my usual fast and frenetic commentary through here, but having a driver coach on board right now, what do you think of the track in particular?
I've been to Phillip Island once for an AMG event myself as an instructor, and one of the first things that you realize is how beautiful the track is actually. But then from a driving perspective, it's got a lot of things you don't expect. Like turn 1, for example, has a lot of banking on it, and it's not easy even in the sim to realize how banked it is until you actually drive it or walk on that corner. And there are other corners as well where banking and the crests play a really big role in how to drive the track fast.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's sort of almost an old school feature that's slowly being lost on newer circuits, I guess for safety or for other reasons. but this banking that's helping you out throughout the corners, it does sort of remind me of a 60s Grand Prix track, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does add a lot. It's a shame when you get some of the flatter tracks, and it's nice to have corners that can catch you out. A little bit of off camber doesn't hurt anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're going to go on board with Afizal Jai as he comes across the start-finish straight here. Do you have any tips for any of the drivers who might be watching the racing this weekend when it comes to this track?
I can try to walk us through the lap here. I don't remember the quarter names or numbers, but yeah, turn 1 here, 5th gear. You're going in full throttle. Make sure you turn in still on full throttle, lift off, and then back throttle there. It's possibly just a partial lift. Braking point here, super tough to get right. You'll notice the track actually crests up a little bit. It's really easy to understeer. If you get on throttle too early, you understeer off the track. And I believe Stoner Corner's coming up, if I remember the names right.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Here you're just gently steering in, just minimizing your steering input so you don't scrub anything. Look for the brake boards on the left. Roughly somewhere around the 100-meter board, slam hard on the brakes, and you can actually turn in surprisingly early here, as he does there. And that's because of the camber on the track, so it's actually a little bit off camber if you turn in late. And then powering in here, another corner that has camber features to it. You can turn in earlier than you think and power earlier than you might think as well. And shifting up through the gears, similar here to Stoner Corner, you just minimize your steering input as much as possible. Easily flat out, but you can lose precious hundredths by cranking a little bit too much steering input. And then here, nice wide entry. Difficult to judge your braking point here as well. The track's going uphill and easy to catch yourself out here. I think it's Hayshed, maybe, or that was the previous corner. And really difficult to judge your braking point here as well. Downhill, easy to understeer, off on the entry, miss your apex. And then balance the throttle here. Should be just about full throttle in these MX-5s. And final corner, really tricky in some cars. With this car, a little bit easy for us. Full throttle, and again, minimizing that steering input as much as possible, using all the track on the exit. And then enjoy the view here. That's one of the best features on the track. As you go to start finish, you see the ocean in the background.
Absolutely, it's just amazing going over that crest and seeing the ocean. And it is an ocean beyond Phillip Island. There's no sea, there's no bay, nothing else. That is the Indian Ocean, I believe, on that side of the country. But well, actually, no, it's the Southern Ocean. I'll get that right eventually.
Yeah, it truly is a picturesque, amazing-looking track. Makes for wicked pictures, and it's not too bad sitting in the passenger seat there, going around some cars at a Mercedes-Benz event either.
Absolutely. So, I mean, Phillip Island is, of course, famous for MotoGP racing, but I believe they've started to really bring car racing into Phillip Island again, I would say, because Phillip Island, for those of you who didn't know the history behind it, it used to be a road course around the island, but when the roads broke up, they actually designed a racetrack right at the edge of that bluff, just before the sea. And that's where the Armstrong 500 started, which, through machinations and all sorts of stuff, became the Bathurst 1000 motor race. But eventually they had to shut the track, but they restarted it as a bike track initially. So it's interesting to see that cars are starting to come back. We've got V8 supercars on the calendar there, Formula Thunder 5000. I keep calling it Formula 5000, but technically it's Formula Thunder 5000. And, of course, a whole bunch of club racing happening there. So it's nice to be coming back to a track that actually is being used quite often. So, yeah. Alrighty, for those of you guys who's still on the stream there, do remember to share the stream before we get the answers to the questions in. We've got a little bot on the end, or the other end of the line, that will be looking at whether you've shared the stream or not. So do share that stream before you answer the questions, and we will be able to pick a answer out of all of the questions. We'll pick one answer out of all the answers that have been asked. Yeah. So.
I understood it. All good.
I have trouble with English, so. But in any case, Yeah, it's been quite interesting. The one question that I've been asking, and it's been a bit of a theme with all of the real life racing drivers that have come on to this stream, and I thought I'd ask it of you as well. Do you think sim racing could become another pathway into motor racing, just like in karting?
Well, I think arguably it already is.
Hmm.
It really is. There's plenty of examples of drivers that have been purely sim drivers and then hopped into a car and gone insanely quick right off the bat. It's what I guess the only sport where that can happen. I can't think of anything else.
I mean, that's the other interesting thing, isn't it? This is virtually, well, apart from maybe pilots who have flight sims, which is sort of an offshoot of the whole sim racing genre, and they've sort of been developing in parallel, but there's virtually no other sport, as you said quite rightly. There's no golf simulator or football simulator that can really prepare you for running on the pitch for 90 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to take on Ronaldo or Messi after fiddling with their Xbox controller.
Yeah. So, yeah, a question for Mikko there. That's Amir Harris again. How does it feel to have coached your number one fan? Do you get a lot of this?
Yeah, Amir was a great kid to coach. Quick driver, lots of fun, good banter.
The more important question is when are we going to see Amir Harris in a sim?
Yeah, Amir, join the series. I know he's been doing some silly. What's the PlayStation game?
Gran Turismo or something.
Yeah, that one. I'm not sure why he does that so much.
Join us in iRacing. Have the real life, well, as close to real life as you can get sim racing experience.
No, but anything. Gran Turismo is actually good fun. Probably not as realistic, but you can learn a fair bit of real technique, even in the more arcadey sims.
Yeah, I guess it is a case of just getting into it. Whatever you can get your hands on to start off with.
Yep.
We've had a couple of guys, Mabarafif, aka Taichi Yagami, who actually was quite quick on a controller, believe it or not, in Gran Turismo. And just like Taichi Yagami, who's another driver that's in the series as well, that those guys came in, and really it was quite impressive to see them adapt to getting a wheel for starters, because of course with iRacing, to be competitive you really do need a wheel and a pedal, however cheap or however affordable, shall we say, your setup is. It's still recommended to go that way, but to adapt to wheels and pedals and to adapt to the iRacing physics and everything else, I guess when you have the very bare basics down, it does make the job a lot easier.
Yeah, it's amazing how well you can transition from a sim to the real thing.
Yeah, so it's really, really fantastic stuff. Now, I guess the only thing left is to ask you is, looking forward towards the future, do you have any plans for yourself in 2021 and further along the road?
Hopefully get to a racetrack again sometime soon.
Oh yeah.
The kart track is open in Singapore, so I'm spending a fair bit of time at the kart track, but who knows, there's some fun racing potentially lined up in different parts of the world. We'll see how the world resets and when we can get going on the racetrack as well.
Awesome stuff. We're all waiting with bated breath for when we can get back to Sepang here, so hopefully we'll be able to see you there shortly.
Yeah, it's not far away, but it's impossible to get there now.
It's an amazing feeling when you're you're about 350 kilometers away from the track. I'm about 40 kilometers away from the track, and to both of us right now, it feels just as far away.
Yeah, but we've got the virtual thing to replace that with, so that's still just as much fun, really.
Yeah, the only thing left, I guess, for us to do is to try and see if iRacing can get the Singapore Grand Prix track and Sepang uploaded onto their service, and finally have a go around Sepang in a sim. We've been able to actually pull that off in AC. So in Assetto Corsa, of course, you have the ability to mod the game, and the same thing happened in R Factor. So we've been able to get some of the racing going on, and who knows, in a few weeks' time, we've been trying out a few sims in the background. So perhaps you might see us competing in an AC or a R-Factor race.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a really high quality current version of Sepang in one of the top sims. I guess the best rendition of Sepang right now is Race Room.
Mm-hmm.
That has the most accurate version of the track, whereas the R-Factor AC mods are a little bit outdated or a little bit iffy on elevation changes and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. But nevertheless, it is sort of satiating our thirst just a little bit until we can get back onto the track. So now I guess that would be time on this evening. Just give me a second. I'm in message through. That's okay. There's nothing there. But yeah, as we've seen, is there anyone else that's going to be answering the questions before we shut the stream down? No one? All right. So anyways, we've got the final 2 rounds of the championship are going to be at Phillip Island and Laguna Seca. Just wanted to get your quick thoughts on those 2 races coming up. Do you see any potential pitfalls, or do you think it's all going to be quite entertaining throughout those last 2 races?
Definitely entertaining. I think Phillip Island is fairly strong on the slipstream effect. Mm-hmm. Laguna Seca, not quite as much, but I think Laguna Seca as well, it's one of the free tracks on iRacing, so a lot of the guys will have lots of laps there, so I'm sure it's going to be a really competitive, tough race. Phillip Island, probably more on the strategy. Being sensible, timing your moves right.
Yeah, so it really is going to be the case of Phillip Island being the slipstreaming track, whereas Laguna Seca being more of an outbreaking, diving up the inside, trying to overtake.
Yeah, and surviving turn 1 and 2. I think in Laguna Seca, it's a tough one.
Yeah, oftentimes throughout the season, we've been looking at some tracks and going, turn 1's going to be a problem here, turn 2's going to be a problem. And we've been sort of a bit iffy in our prediction as to where the problems are going to lie, especially at Alton Park. We were amazed that everyone got through the Foster's corner in one piece. That little sort of shortcut at the bottom of the hill at turn 3 and 4. Do you think at Phillip Island there's only going to be any trouble points for some of the drivers coming into the start?
Well, yeah, I mean, even turn 2 is a tough one. Turn 1, usually it's fast enough in these cars that you can go too wide there and survive. But then the next corner is a tough one. Yeah. You almost always end up seeing one car off into the grass and maybe all the way into the gravel.
Yeah, that's quite a common thing because, like you said, it's going over a crest, and if you're too far out, it's very easy for the car to almost be thrown off the track, if you will.
Yep.
Especially when you've got cars coming up the inside. I had a bit of practice with some of the guys there. I've been being a bit sneaky over the last couple of rounds and joined some of the practice sessions that the guys have been hosting. And what I have found is I think turn 2 at Phillip Island is going to be quite tricky, and I can already foresee that turn 2, well, I guess it's turn 2, the Andretti hairpin, the opening part of Laguna Seca, that's going to be quite a tricky one as well. So you got any tips for avoiding the usual first corner pileup?
Yeah, just stay far away from me.
That works.
But I guess more seriously, it's just predicting a little bit, looking far ahead. People will be checking up, especially early laps. Don't just use your normal braking points.
Yeah, I guess that is the main thing there. Just exercise a bit of caution in the first couple of laps of the race, and you really will be able to pull through. Afi Fadlan there saying, all the best, Mikko. Hope you guys have a fun race. I do hope there's going to be a big battle with Toyota teams as well. Got to go practice lessons at 10. Oh, practice lessons or practice sessions? Oh, well, yeah.
Either way.
So I'm just getting word here. We were trying to get the winners announced on stream, but unfortunately it's taking a little bit of time to sort out through all of the answers that were given through in the chat box there. So we will announce the winner right after the stream. And do stay tuned to Adrenaline Impact for that. The SIM card will be given out today, so do stay tuned to that. But for now, I guess that's going to be it for us here at the pre-race show. A special thanks goes out to our media partner, Galeri Kereta, XOX Mobile, One XOX, XOX eSIM, and Estremo Oil of Italy. And a special thanks to our guest for this evening, Mikko Nässi. Good luck on the last 2 rounds of the championship.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and huge thanks as well to you guys, Adrenaline Impact, and all the partners for putting on a really, really professionally run show. It's awesome to take part in.
Awesome stuff. So that's it from Mikko Nässi, from Karalang, our broadcaster, and all the people who make this possible remotely through MCO period. We've got about 400 kilometers worth of distance between all of us in the studio right now, with yourself included. So quite a bit of distance involved, but thanks to everyone who's also competing in the championship as well, and thanks to all our partners. But from now, that's going to be it from me, Matthew Palmer. We will see you all in the next broadcast. Bye for now. Ta-ra.
Thanks.